So, after I'd been in the car business for a little while, I worked a lot when I was in the car business. Like minimum 60 hours a week. Like if I got a day off, I'd be pretty lucky. Anybody who's been in the car business, that's not a surprise. That's just kind of what it is. And yeah, when I'd been there for a while, and I don't know. After a while, I got kind of burnt out, and a buddy of mine had moved to Texas. He was a finance guy with me. He just sold literally all of his shit. I bought his entire apartment, everything, like his laptop, his Xbox, his TV, his couch. He was like, "Hey, like, can you help me sell this shit?" I was like, "Well, how much do you want for it?" And he was like, well, $750 for this, $500 for that, $20 for each of these." And I was like, "Yo, wait. How much do you want for the whole thing?" He's like, "Dude, I'll sell you the whole storage unit for $4,000. I bought the whole storage unit. He moved out there. Wow, great aside, Vince. Completely worthless story. Anyway, so he moved out to Texas, and I was still selling cars at Nissan, and I wasn't feeling it. Like I just worked way too much. I'd burnt myself out. It's something that the GM and the finance director both told me that I was gonna do. They're like, "Dude, you got to take some time," but they don't really give you the time. And my whole mentality, because you couldn't really take the time anyway, not without getting shit for it. So I told myself, like, "Oh yeah, you know, I'll just work really hard and I'll be able to retire by the time I'm like fucking 50, right? Right? You know? Just work really, really hard. Just focus on making money." Like, what was I thinking? I was like barely like 22 years old. And I was just like, "Oh yeah, I'll just work really hard for longer than I've been alive so far. As long as it took me just to get here, I'll do that, and then a couple 10 more years, and then I'll just be done forever, right?" And I mean, it sounds good, You retire at 50, you spend the other half of your life retired, which means you only worked for a third of your life, right? You only worked really, really, really hard for 30 years. So, I mean, the math kind of makes sense. So I fly out to Texas. I'm hanging out with my buddy. We go to some bars and some nice restaurants, and I'd never been to Texas. And we're driving all over the countryside. We drove from Dallas to Oklahoma City to like go to a casino. We did all kinds of crazy shit. But all in the span of like 2 or 3 days. And so then, like, at the end of the third day, it's like, "Hey, I didn't invite you out here for nothing." No, he's not gay. uh, no, he says to me, he'd been driving around with his dad's ashes in an urn, in the trunk for like 4 or 5 years. And I mean, like, this guy was a buddy of mine, but he was pretty closed off. He didn't really talk about himself a lot. Actually, that's a lie. The guy liked to talk about himself, but nothing personal. It's a weird skill a lot of really good salespeople have. They can talk about themselves all day, and you can learn nothing about them. But yeah, so he tells me his dad's ashes are in his car, and he asked me, he's like, the reason he's still holding on to his dad's ashes is that he's supposed to take his dad back to Ocean City, which is outside of Portland. It's like part way between Portland and Seattle, on the West Coast. And he's like, "Well, you want to fly out there with me?" So spontaneously, we just both go to the airport and buy tickets to fly to Seattle, like that night, with his dad's ashes. No permit. Which is weird, because you'd think that they'd look at that on an x-ray machine and they'd be like, "Sir, it seems that you have a brick of something in the bottom of this jar." Like, it seems like it shouldn't be that easy. We fly to Seattle. Anyway, fly to Seattle. We land. No hate on Seattle. I understand there's tons of people that love it. I personally landed and thought, "Wow, this is the worst city I've ever seen in my life. It is so boring here." He was telling me he was thinking the same thing when we were driving out of Seattle. He tells me, he's like, dude, for real, I could have thrown Pops over the bridge and we just hopped the next plane back to Dallas. But no, so we rent a car, we drive. It was a Volvo XC60. It was like it's like a little bit smaller than a Ford Escape. And all the cool features. We drive, and we both thought, like, we were like, oh fuck, a Volvo. But it was actually pretty sweet. I'm gonna be honest. It was a cool ass car. And I mean, I don't know why they get so much hate. They look pretty nice. Wow, okay, did it again. What I'm really doing is using humor to distract from the fact that I'm about to open up to you guys. We drive the rest of the way down to Ocean City. You know, don't even check into the hotel yet. There's this really big, nice resort hotel, but it's like on a gray beach. And the hotel is right on the beach. Like, you can see it. There's no dune. Like, you drive. The driveway for the hotel, you can keep driving all the way onto the sand. And so we drive all the way down onto the sand. We turn the car around and pop the hatch open, and we're sitting in the hatch, and we're sitting there. And I'm just sitting there. I'm looking over the water, and we're looking for. We sat there in silence. I have no idea how long it was, and I just like started to cry, like really, really crying. And it's kind of embarrassing, but I'm not embarrassed to say it because, like, if you've never been there, like if you've never been to that part of the country, then I guess probably you just don't get it. Like, but just looking out over the water, how peaceful it was. It's like a little bit cold, but it's not like chilly. And just looking out over the water, watching the sunset over the ocean. And I just started to cry. And like, my buddy he either doesn't say anything or doesn't notice for like probably 5 minutes. And because that's how long this was going on. And I'm like just trying to keep it together. And he's like, yo, or he's like, yeah, hey, he's like, hey man, are you all right? And like, mind you, again, this is a guy that I talked to, I hung out with a lot, but we weren't like open with each other about a lot of things. So it was weird. Like, he opened up to me about his dad. We flew out there, and now I'm crying. I'm the one crying. And I told him, like, I didn't think that I was going to take the time to get out to that part of the country until I was old. I told myself I was just going to work. And that was going to be the kind of thing I crammed in right at the end. And I was just crying. I hadn't quit my job at Nissan at that point. I hadn't decided to go back to school. I just thought that I was in the car business. Like, I thought that was what I was going to do. And I just remember thinking, like, that guy, like, his dad, like, dropped dead, like, in his 50s. Just, like, died of a heart attack, like, in, like, his, like, early to mid 50s. So, like, I thought I was going to work, and then retire in my 50s. But what if I dropped dead too? That was all I could think about. It was how much of my life I had taken for granted, to the point where I took life itself for granted. And it was just, I don't know, man. You gotta fucking take care of yourself. Like, you gotta take care of yourself, and you gotta go do those things. Like, I'm not. Don't take out a loan of any kind ever. Don't ever take out any loan ever, except for a mortgage, I guess. I don't know. Honestly, you'd be better off taking out a business loan and then making enough money that, like, growing your business so you can make enough money to buy a house in cash, which is like super, super unrealistic. Fuck it, I'll probably just cut all this shit off, but I don't know, man. Just don't take it for granted.